Hi. Today we're going to take a look at exercise 1, Autodesk Inventor 2022. In this exercise, we're going to take a look at how to build that part that you see up on the screen. And it's really a foundational part because it's just some simple extrudes. We're going to draw some sketches to create those extrudes. And then also we're going to take a look at the fillet tool, the chamfer, and shelling as well. Now this is on ray tracing currently, but I'm going to disable that and then rotate it, and you can see it's a shelled out part, so thin walled. And if you're wanting to get the training guide for this, it's free, and you just go to vertanu1.com and then click on instructional manuals, and you'll see the Autodesk Inventor training guide. Now currently I have the 2021 up there, and I need to update that and get 2022. Thus far there aren't a whole lot of differences that are going to make much difference inside the training guide, so you could still use it quite well with 2022. All right, so let's begin. Go up to the new button right here, the new, and here we're using the templates for the United States English, and we're going to go ahead and use the standard IPT. Notice there's parts, assemblies, and drawings in here, and something called presentation files. We'll see that in the midterm exam. Go ahead and hit create. Now, before we get started any further, let's take a look at the options menu. If you go to the, not the I, right below the I, the file, and go to options, and this is going to give you an options menu here, and you could see all sorts of information. We're only going to look at a couple areas right now, but as we go through the course, you'll actually get to see more of these options and how they're used. If you go to colors here, right now mine is set to default for 2022. They seem to change it every year almost, the background a little bit. But if you want, there is a nice, it's called presentation. I really like using that because it brightens the background. And I'm just going to go with one color. And that's entirely up to you if you want to use that. Also under display, and we could say use document settings or application settings. Let's go to use applications and then go to settings here, and then you're going to see, like for example, if you want to set the model edges to contrast with the part or the background, and I like it set to blue, or you could actually just set one color. I'm not blue, but black there. All right, also visual style, shaded with edges is my favorite. Again, this is up to you if you want to use these or not. There are ground shadows, object shadows, and things like that. Those, you could set them, and they're pretty decent as far as performance-wise. You might take a little hit, those of you who might be doing this on a tablet or something, but for the most part, it's pretty decent in how if those higher settings enable you to see some of the entities. But in this case, all the rest of this, I'm going to go ahead and just hit OK. And there's other options in there as well. We're not going to go through them right now. But down below, just hit apply and then hit close here. All right. Now I'm going to go to hit the little plus symbol next to, not model states, actually next to origin. You'll see that every part file here has a YX, XZ, and an XY. And the XY is your front plane. This is your top plane, the XZ, and this is your right plane. Those three planes intersect each other at a centralized origin, which is your center point right here. And you can't really see it when I click on it, but once we start a sketch, you'll be able to see it. Now, this software does enable you to delete that point, and I wouldn't recommend it. It's a nice anchor point. You might actually find yourself accidentally deleting it if you select too many entities on the screen at once. But it's really, it's nice to have that. You could always put it back in position. But that's your 0 marker in space. So for X, Y, and Z, it's 0. All right, now what we're going to do, we actually have to sketch on those planes. So you could click right on Start 2D Sketch. Now you'll see there's Start 3D Sketch. 3D Sketch is very nice for structural steel, for tubing, things like that, that kind of weave around and do 3D type movements. We're actually just going to use the 2D sketcher, and we could do it a couple ways. Like I said, you could click right here. We're going to sketch on the front plane, and the first 4 lessons, or exercises as we call them, we're going to do them all on the front plane. And you'll find that it really doesn't make a whole lot of difference what plane you sketch them on, because if you're exporting it for a CAM product or something else, there used to be limitations as to rotation, and it was difficult in some older CAM systems. But now that's it's gotten a lot better over the years. Anyway, let's get going. So X, Y, and then when you go over here, you'll see this little quick launch that appears, and that's Create Sketch. Could we have selected this? Absolutely. But we want the XY plane. Hit the little button there. Now go to the rectangle tool. Now if you hit the little arrow underneath rectangle, you see there's a whole slew of different tools. There's slots, there's polygons. So there is a center rectangle. We're not going to use that, but that's actually a very strong tool for actually lab 1B, which is the lab that coincides with this. But let's go to 2-point rectangle. Now right at that origin, see that at the center of the crosshairs, there's that little yellow dot. If you set your colors differently, it might be a different color, so don't worry, but just know where you're at. That's your 0 marker. Let's go ahead and click one time, move your pointer up and to the right, and you'll see you could input information here. So we want it to be 3 for the first one, so 3.00. You don't have to type in the zeros or the point, just type 3 and hit Tab on your keyboard to go to the next one. Now that next one is open and it's enabling us to change it, you could just type in 5 and hit Enter. Now to zoom to fit, so it fits that, just click right over here in the upper right. There's this click or drag box. Go ahead and click on front, and that will automatically zoom to fit whatever you're working on. Now you'll notice there are other options, like there's a home button. Go ahead and click on that. We'll be using that a lot. That brings you to an isometric view. When we get extruding and making these 3D, that's what you're going to work in quite a bit. But notice this, you could actually click and drag on this to rotate. But for right now, go ahead and just click back on front. That will return us back to this orientation. Now, the zoom on your mouse works. If you scroll in and out, it will zoom in and out. Now hit Escape. You'll notice that these dimensions, if you wanted to change them, you can. You could just simply double click on them. And let's say we want this to be 4 instead of 5. Hit Enter and it will automatically update. So these can be edited at any time. Let's type in 5. Hit Enter. Now you could also hit the undo button as well. All right, now moving on here, we're going to go ahead and extrude this. Now there's a variety of ways you can do this, but this is one method I really like. Just 3D model, extrude. We're going to take it level by level, you might say. And let's go to the home button because we're going into 3D here. So you'll see right here, you could type in an explicit value there, or you could type it in over here. You could also flip the directions. You could have go both ways, or symmetric as they say. And in this case, let's just type in 0.5. So 0.5, and you'll see it update. You could also grab this little arrow here and drag it. And it's not always the easiest to get it exactly in place, but the especially in inches, like 1/2 inch and 1 inch, they come in pretty easy. So not bad there. Let's go ahead and hit OK. Now select this face. Now instead of sketching on those planes are your paper essentially. It allows you to go ahead and you select them. You could draw whatever you want. You could extrude them. Now we're going to learn how to make additional planes, but we just made one here actually, and it's a surface. And any flat surface you could sketch on. So go ahead and select on the flat face there and go to the quick launch here, and you'll find there's some options. There's Create Sketch. That's what we want actually, but let's look at some of the others. There's Make Sketch Visible, so it pops up those dimensions and leaves them up there so you can change them. You could also use the geometry for other things. Share Sketch. That's kind of like a copy paste or output it. Now there's Edit Sketch, and that will actually edit that 3x5 sketch. So if you wanted to add or modify, we can easily do that at that point. And then there's Edit the Extrude. Now the extrude is that 3D volume that is created. So all those things can be mastered and re-edited. But let's just go to Create New Sketch or Create Sketch and click on Front. Now go back to Rectangle, and at that origin, when the little dot turns green, click, drag it to the upper right. Now you'll see here, you have 3 by 1 point whatever. Now we want it to be actually 3 by 1.5, but instead of using the 3-inch dimension, if we leave that in there and type it in, it's not going to be tied to the overall length of our block. Thus, if change comes down the road, and it always does, if we widen the block to 4, this won't follow. We'll have to edit this block on top of it and put in 4 too, and that's extra work. We don't want to do extra work. So what I recommend is just let your pointer snap to the right edge, and it will override that with what's called a constraint. Click. All right, now hit escape, and let's go to dimension. Let's add one dimension in specific. Go to dimension up here. Now click on this bottom line here and this top line, and then drag it to the right and click. And now you'll see mine is just some 1.7381, whatever. And you can see how many decimal places you could go up to for precision. So very high precision here. Let's go ahead and type 1.5 over it, hit enter. Now, do we need a dimension to constrain the width? Let's try it. Click on this point here to this point here. Click, and you get a little message. It says adding this dimension will over-constrain the sketch. Remember, you have two levels of constraints. You have dimensions that constrain, and you have these relations, so they're called constraints right here. And another word is relations, or common elements of geometry. Like you'll see there's tangency, parallelism, perpendicularity, vertical, horizontal, concentric, things like that. So just hit cancel here. And let's go ahead and go to 3D model and extrude, and you'll see that extrude out. Now, if you want it to actually be attached like we do, you'll see there's the Boolean option. And by default, it's join. But no, you can have a disjoint body, and that's right here. You can select new solid. And that's very useful for certain projects you might be working on, but not right now. We want this to be one, so hit OK. All right, so we have our solid there. Now, we know that this will rotate, but here's another trick. Hold Shift, get your pointer in the center of the screen, and now push down your middle wheel. Hold it while you're holding Shift, and that rotates dynamically. Okay. Now, if you don't hold Shift and you hold down the wheel and drag it left, right, up, and down, it pans. Okay. All right, now we want to add a hole. Now, we could add it in this perspective view, or I should say this from this perspective. Let's go ahead and click on front, and we'll just add it from the front orientation. Now, there is a hole tool, and we're going to learn that in exercise 4. It's actually quite easy, and it gives you a whole set of counterbores, countersinks. It actually has the drill tip angles incorporated in it. We don't need to use that just yet. I want to show you how to cut just a simple hole by drawing a sketch. So click on this surface, go to Create Sketch. Now go to the circle tool. If you hit the little arrow next to circle, you'll see there's circle, circle tangent, and ellipse. We just want circle. Okay, now in this upper left region of the gray block, click and drag out, and we're going to go ahead and make that 0.75 and hit enter. Now we use dimensions to constrain it how far we want it from the edges. So go to dimension, select the center point, select the left edge, and I'm going to actually click on front here to center it. And right in the middle there, just move this up, click, and type in 1. Now click on that center point, and it should remember your tool, and click on this top edge and drag it to the left and click and make that 1. Hit escape. Now if you'd like, you could drag this out. Now what's the point of like aligning dimensions so they look like they're in a blueprint? Well, these can be carried over in a retrieval process that's in the drawing. So you could say bring those back, and it will propagate, and however you position them, it's going to return to that. So it's a very nice tool. Let's go ahead and let's go to 3D model and extrude. Go to the isometric or the home button, and you'll see it's going to add material if it goes this direction. So let's try the direction behavior, flip it. It's smart enough, there's a little bit of AI built in here. It was smart enough to know that there was a volume behind it, so it went with a removal of material or cut. Now, it's not always that smart. Be aware there's times when there's like a variety of holes and pockets, and it doesn't know the difference. The scan that it produces can't do it. So sometimes you'll have to help it and select it manually, but we're in good shape. Now, again, if a design change comes down, and they always do, right now it's set to 1/2 inch deep. If the overall thickness of that bracket thickens to 1 inch, we're going to have to go back and change this one too. We don't want to do that. We want it all to update. If we know that this is going to be a through hole, this is what you do. Instead of distance, there's this, through all. Go ahead and select through all. Hit OK. And there we have it. Now the rest of this is just to enhance your experience. Normally, that used to be the block that I used to give the students to do. But if you want to make this look really good for a portfolio, go ahead and select fillet. Now select the over in here, you just have to hover, type 1, and hit enter. Now select this edge right here. See how it highlights red on mine? And you see a preview. Let's go ahead and select this edge. Those are the only two I want you to do right now. Okay, so don't get carried away just yet. You can always go back and have fun with it. Just learn these tools first, because we'll stack tools on top of it. All right, so there we have those fillets. So there's how to do a fillet. Now, find chamfer. Go ahead and select chamfer. Now, chamfer is an angle, and you have the ability to go distance to distance, distance to angle, and two distances. Distance to distance, whatever we put in for this parameter, and that's what it's set to, when positioned on a 90-degree block, it's going to go ahead and make it 45 degrees because the two distances are equal. But if you have a variety of different blueprints that are handed to you that don't coincide like that, you could choose from one of those other two aspects. But anyhow, we do want 0.125. Go ahead and select this edge here, and it knows to propagate around. It follows the tangent edges of these fillets, but notice it stops at the sharp edges. Okay, go ahead and hit OK. All right, so we've got our part looking pretty good here. Now let's practice rotating again. Remember the shift key and the middle wheel. Push it and hold it down. Now move your mouse left, right, up and down, and rotate it. And if you like, take a minute, pause my video, and learn how to rotate it, because just like if you're learning this for the first time, viewing it is so important. Just like a child, when they're looking at a toy, they learn how to articulate and move and position it. So take a minute or two if you like. Rotate it so it looks like mine here. Okay, if you've come back now, notice over here we could just click on this little block too, and that gives us a sturdier isometric view, a true actual isometric view of that position. And we could scroll and zoom up. Now we're going to use the shell tool. We're going to make this into a thin-walled part. Go to shell. Now the wall thickness, let's keep it at 0.1, which is considered 100,000ths of an inch. Those of you who are going to be heading into manufacturing, some aspects of engineering, when you're making designs and someone says take off 60 thousandths, that means remove 60 thousandths of an inch if you're in the United States. And thousandths isn't the same as the mathematical thousandths that you learned in high school. This is different. It's like that 0.1 is 100 thousandths. 0.060 would be 60 thousandths. 0.25, you could say 250 thousandths, but you know what we say at that point in the States here? Quarter inch. That's a quarter. 0.5, instead of saying 500 thousandths, you would say a half inch. So they use that thousandths to indicate the 3 decimal places afterwards. So if it's 0.001, that's 1,000th of an inch. Now they're also going even smaller than that to millionths these days, but anyhow, for right now though, for the most part, that's what we're using in this class. Okay, let's go ahead and hit remove faces, make sure that's pushed in. Select, let's push it in again. Sometimes, all right, why are we, hold on, let me cancel here. Let's try that again, shell. Okay, odd, I talked too long, something happened there. Go ahead and select this face, select that face, and this face. Now, notice you can also select like, hey, I got that one too, but maybe I want that boss there. So if you hold Shift and select it again, it will deselect it. So Shift and the left mouse button. Now for the most part, this whole time we've been using the left mouse button, and this is in the training guide. It talks about what the mouse buttons do and so on and so forth. Now, training guide here I have up, and those of you who are taking my class at the community college, it has a syllabus, but just be careful, that syllabus is a very generic syllabus. It doesn't have dates. So, and there's some changes I made to it. Okay, so here we're getting to the actual tool, and you can see this is how the manual's written. I don't like to say it's a great manual. It's notes, basically, that I threw together. Okay, and so you can see this is how we started off. It tells you all the little instructions, and it gets more vague as we go through, assuming that you know certain tools already that you learned in the previous lessons. So here we can scroll down, and we're all the way down to the bottom. You'll see that's finished, but we're adding some additional features here. So, forgot where I was going with that. Anyhow, let's go ahead and just hit OK. And there is our part. Okay, now if you want to dress it up a bit, if you're making a portfolio, here's what I'd recommend. I definitely recommend making a portfolio, because it's gonna, wherever you're applying for a job, if they have Inventor or any CAD system, they're gonna get a bunch of resumes, they'll print them out or they get them electronically. But if you supply a portfolio via PDF or some way, when I used to hire people, they'd be at the top of the list if they had a portfolio. The others, they might have a good resume, but there's no guarantee that they could say, oh yeah, I learned Inventor, but really how good are they? So if you see a portfolio, I typically stack them at the top of my list to interview. So that's what I recommend doing here. Now, here's how to do it. If you want to dress this up, stop it from looking like a boring part. First of all, go to View, go to Visual Style, and I do like Realistic. I think it's pretty neat. There's also Shade with Edges. There's all these cool little features. But also set it to Perspective. That creates a vanishing point. Now, without perspective, rooms would not get smaller as you look at them, you know, as the distance. So that's what we're setting up there. It gives it some realism. There's shadows. You can hit all shadows. There's also reflections. Okay, and you can see the reflection there. Now, we could also start adding materials. So select the top of the part here. Well, let's save this first of all, before you start doing this. Go to Save, and I'm just going to save it in my documents and call this capital E1, and actually I'll have to call this E1B because I already saved it. Capital E is for exercise and 1 is for 1. So your exercises are going to all be labeled E1, E2, E3, E4, and so on. Your labs are Lab 1, Lab 1B, Lab 2, Lab 3, things like that. And it's just L for lab. All right, now let's go ahead and select the top where it says E1B. Now there's generic, and then there's these materials, and you can find some really neat things here. So for example, some of them are a little too wild for me, but it depends on what you're making in real life that you might actually need those. So for example, we have nickel. Let's go with nickel there, and you see it adds a certain sheen or a polish to it. Now here's what we could do too. We could select the whole chamfer right here, and now select something different for that. So let's say I wanted that to be, let's see, we'll go with a polished titanium. And it's a very subtle difference. You might want to put something else in there, and feel free to use whatever you like. Now, if you go to Visual Style, go to Realistic, it even gives it takes away those edges and makes it look even better. Let's go back and shaded edges. Now you do have this. You have the ability, there's default. Oh, if we go to Realistic, ray tracing turns on. Now watch what ray tracing does. And let's go to the isometric here and turn on ray tracing. And as you sit back and watch, you have low, draft, and high quality. It's going to make it look really, really shiny, okay, and impressive for a portfolio. Some of the things you could see that you could add to this. Now again, those of you who don't care about this, if you're just taking the class and you don't ever want to be a designer, skip ahead or just finish the labs, do whatever you like. This is for those of you who really want to make a portfolio or really might find interest if you have an artistic flair. So some other things you could add to this, watch this, go to 3D model and go to fillet. Now there are, I'm going to hit OK here. All right, set it to 0.01, so 10 thousandths of an inch. Select some of these edges here and watch how it's going to give it even more realism. Now some renderers do have this capability, depending on how much you're using. Inventor I'm not certain of, I haven't found it yet at least. Okay, I'm gonna hit OK. Now it re-renders it and it gives it a little bit of a more realistic, there's not, because nothing's like really perfect as far as a perfectly sharp edge. There's some sort of edge that gives off a reflection of light, typically, not always, but anyhow. So here you could see that that enhanced it a little bit, gave it a few more edges. And at this point, what I like to do, I go to like Microsoft Word, and before I move it over here, I'm going to select this and Alt Print Screen. Alt Print Screen, if you're holding Alt and you hit Print Screen on your keyboard, it's going to capture just what you have selected. So I have that Inventor selected. So now I could go over here. I could type in E1, Enter, and then Control V as in Victor. So that's paste. And it pastes it in there. You could click on this, go to Format. Now, those of you who don't have Microsoft Word, all the systems are almost the same these days. You could get those free ones like LibreOffice. Just download that, go to LibreOffice, and you've got it. Now look at this. Now we have a fantastic looking portfolio piece. Looks much more complex than what we had earlier, and polished and finished. And this is what's going to stand out. And you can enhance it even more than this, but just don't go too far. Like when I see students do this, don't do this. This makes me put it down a bit lower on the scale because it shouldn't look like that. All right, shouldn't be stretched. So if you want to make it bigger, you grab the corners. Don't grab the sides. Okay, so that finishes that exercise there. Now you'll see the labs are on page 20 and 21. We have two of them. This is lab 1, and that's really kind of like a big letter F. All right, it's 2 inches by 3.5, and then it has stacks of dimensions baselined off of the left and the bottom. So let's go ahead and do that. 2 by 3.5. Go to New. Now this is a good one because we're going to go standard eye part. Now watch this. Instead of going to the origin, I wanted to just show that to you that one time. You could just click on Start 2D Sketch, and it brings up the planes. Now here's the top plane. That's the XZ. But like I said, XY is one we use the most here, so select XY. Now use the line tool this time and get to that point. Click, drag this up. Remember, this goes 2 inches. All right, and we could click on the front there and it will zoom out. And then this goes 1 inch across, so we could snap, make sure it goes 90, type in 1, and drag it down. This goes 1 inch straight down, make sure it's 90, and that goes across. Now, this is 0.75. Now, if we wanted to follow the actual drawing that we had there versus plugging these numbers in a little bit differently, here's what we could do. We could just eyeball it for right now. Let me zoom out a little bit there. Whoops, let's go back to front. And move this. Snap so it infers to that point. That's one of my favorite options of this software, is that it actually snaps and constrains. Others don't add that constraint automatically by default like this does. Okay, now I'm going to drag this down, and again I'm just kind of eyeballing these dimensions. It goes a little further. Now because this is from the makers of AutoCAD, those of you who have AutoCAD experience, if you're used to fast keys, at this point, what would you do? You want to close it. Hit C. Oh, it used to do it. Maybe, I think it's still in there, but I'm not sure what happened. I haven't used that in a long time. Anyhow, never mind about that, but I'm sure you could look it up and search it, because I could have swore it used to do it, but I might be wrong. I'm using AutoCAD 2 quite a bit, as you know. You may or may not know. All right, so now what we're going to do is add those dimensions just like we saw them. So we could go to the dimension tool, drag this down. This is supposed to be 3.5. And again, click on front if you want that zoom to fit. Now click on this line here to this line, and we'll stack them from the baseline, which is the left line. 1.75 from here to here. This one, I think it's 2.5. We could always change it. Let's go back. Yeah, 2.5, and then 8.5 and 1. So this one, 8.5. Oh, I'm sorry, 0.85. That would be way too big. And then from here to here, that's 1. Now, notice it didn't add it, and that's because I have the 1 inch dimension there. Okay, so cancel. If I want it to look exactly like the print, and some places do, you might want to actually get rid of this dimension. Oops. So select it, hit delete. Up. Just right mouse button, click on it, and you'll find delete. Now we could go back to dimension, select that line there to this bottom line here, and it's already set to 1, hit the green check mark, and we're ready. We could go ahead and extrude this. We'll go to 3D model, go to extrude, and this gets extruded a 1/2 inch, so 0.5, enter, and you could click on the home button, and there's your model. Now some might ask, like, hey, do we have to create the 2D drawings? Not yet. 2D drawings we cover the 6th week. So if you want, you can watch that video. There's nothing wrong with you doing that, but I just want to focus right now for the first 4 weeks on solid modeling. Okay, now let's move on to the next drawing. Now the next drawing here is this guy. It's just a simple block. It's a 3x5, so basically the same parameters as the first exercise we did. And there's some holes, 1/2 inch, they're all centered. You can see the little equal symbol means it's symmetric across, so it's all the same. 1.5 in the center. So let's get started. Go to New, Standardized Part, just double click, go to Start Sketch. I'm going to do this on the XZ plane just to show you could do it. I have students say, does it really matter? And again, it doesn't matter as much as it used to. It depends on where you're working, but for the most part, it doesn't. Now for this one, let's use 2-point rectangle. So it's basically a center rectangle. Click at the center, drag it out, and on the right there we can see we want to set that to 3, and then hit Tab, and then 5. And hit the top button. And I just realized that I had it rotated. So we want top to spell top like that. Easy fix. Hit Escape. Double click on the 3, change it to 5. Double click on the 5, change it to 3. All right. Now, let's go ahead and add the holes while we can in this. So unlike what we did with exercise 1, we're going to end right here. So let's go ahead and make that 0.5. We'll do it on one side. I'm going to show you how to mirror. We haven't learned mirror yet. We usually learn it in exercise 2, but we'll go ahead and take a look at it. So this is a sneak preview. Now, we'll go to line, and then we're going to change it to construction line or a center line. Now that's because we want to mirror about it. So I'm going to hover over here on that center, click, get to the green dot, drag it across, drag it here, and then hit Escape. Oh, you know what? It didn't add that last one. Let's go back to line. Click. All right. Now be sure after you hit Escape, turn off center line, or else everything you make is going to be a center line. Now it's easy to fix. You just click on whenever you've made a center line and turn that off, and it will return it back to normal. So it's not a big deal. But let's go ahead and position this now. So let's go to Dimension, and it gets positioned 0.75 off this edge. And again, center point to left edge, 0.75. All right. Now, stay away when you drop from that center line there. That one you don't want to be attached to. If it is, you can actually delete the constraint or just click on the circle, redraw it. Sometimes that's easier. We're going to learn more about deleting constraints another day. All right, now we want to mirror this across. So here's how to mirror. Click on what you want to mirror. And by the way, I hit Escape a moment ago, so you might want to do that before you do this. Select what you want to mirror. Now, you could go to the mirror tool right up here. And look at that, it's set for a mirror line. Just go ahead and click here. Oops, you know what, I should have clicked on that first. There. Let's restart. Done. Okay, go to mirror. The first thing it's doing, sometimes I like to pre-select, but I messed up that. So select. Select what you want to mirror first while this is open. Now click on mirror line and select the mirror line that you want to mirror across, which was the center line. And hit apply. Now it keeps the mirror tool open. Notice we couldn't do both at the same time, but now we could select those two entities. Now you can window select them too, just like you could in AutoCAD or some other system. Now go to mirror line, select that line, and hit apply, and done. So there we go. Let's go ahead and 3D model, extrude, and we're going to extrude this. Now notice this, because there are it's chopped up in little segments. Go ahead and just select those profiles so they all get selected. Now, let's type in 1.5 for the overall thickness. And that didn't do what I wanted to do, so I'm going to click on this, and that's fine. I could go to Edit Extrude. Now, let's try that again, 1.5. Hit OK. So as you can see, it's really easy to edit. It's a very forgiving tool. Now, select this face, start a sketch. Use the center rectangle again, click in the center, drag this out, let it snap, but first let's type in 1.5 and then make sure it's snapping to that edge. All right, now we could go to 3D Model, Extrude, and see it's extruding up. You could drag it down if you like, and it knows to cut down. We actually want it 1 inch, so type in 1 inch there for the depth. And it's done. Now, again, if you want to make a portfolio, let me just show you some ways you can enhance this. If you don't care, this is all I expect from you. If you're taking my class, you can send this to me. We're all good. You got an A on it. But, and what you do is send me a PDF. Those of you who are taking my class, just go to File and Export PDF. Now there is the 3D PDF, but I don't want that. I just need the 2D PDF, like this isometric view. You could also click on isometric. I do like that view too. That way I could see it and give you your grade. I don't need the part sent to me. All right, but now let's enhance it. Go to Fillet and set this to 0.5 and select these 4 edges. And hit OK. Now let's go to chamfer and just have a little fun here. Go to chamfer, and we'll put 0.125 on this edge and that edge. Hit OK. Note you can use the chamfer for a countersink too. In the whole tool, though, it has the standard countersink, so you might want to wait or just go to exercise 4, and near the end I go through how to use it, and that has the same, a little different, but anyway, let's set it to 0.25 and select the edge, and you can see now we have countersinks in there. All right, and does anyone remember how to rotate with the mouse? The wheel, push the wheel down and shift. Okay. All right. I don't really like the look of those chamfers there. Let's find the first one and edit it. And let's actually just set a 0.125. It's a little bit big there. It almost looked whimsical. And for a portfolio piece, it's not going to look very good. All right, let's flip it around and let's shell it out. All right, select this face. I'm going to make it a little bit thinner, 0.062. And there we go. Now, if you want to visually enhance it even more, go to View, Visual Styles, Realistic, Shadows. You can turn all these things on. And you can go Default, and let's go with Galvanized. Let's see what that looks like. Well, it's not bad. It has kind of a cool little texture on it. And then remember, you could select like, hey, I want all the chamfers, these chamfers here, to be something different. So let's go ahead. We'll make that gold. Oh, I don't like that gold. It's like a flat gold. Let's go back there, chamfer. Let's go with this one looks interesting, like a copper color. All right, so you could enhance it that way. Then also remember there's perspective and reflections. And then you could turn on, these are different lighting, like there's the default, but this is adding backgrounds and things. I really like the default, but you use whatever you want, hit ray tracing, and you're going to see a very nice enhanced image appear. And the faster, this is going to run faster the more cores you have on your CPU, so it's a good thing to know. Now, here's some little technical things that are really useful. First of all, some of you might find if you double click on some of these dimensions, sometimes it wipes out parts of the interface. If the interface disappears, like for example, this disappears, go to user interface and you could turn them on or off. You're going to find like the model browser you could turn on or off. I like it on. I quite honestly am surprised when people turn it off. And for some reason it's not coming back there, but let's see. Oh, it's probably because the renderer is on. Be sure to turn off ray tracing when you're done. It's going to suck up system resources. Okay, over here, this is a way to minimize your panel. So you could bring it down to very simple options. Like as you hover over them, you'll get the tools, but you just keep clicking on it until you get the interface that you like. And I always, for my students, just use this standard interface like this. Okay, so note that that button does that work for you. Okay, there's a lot more you'll learn in the other exercises. This course goes up, we do 10 exercises and something like 7 labs, if I'm correct, maybe more actually. So take a look at those, and there's a midterm and a final exam as well. They're all on Britannia 1 webpage. Thank you for watching.